All right, folks, welcome back to the show. It is our final ever, maybe ever, probably for a long time ever, interview episode before we switch formats. I am really glad to go out with a bang because we have a young lady that I've been trying to get with on this show for, gosh, probably 4 or 5 months now. I think I was mostly guilty of rescheduling. 2024 has been a bonkers year, but she is here, dang it. We are recording and I could not be happier to welcome Elis Umana to the show. She is the founder and CEO of Conexion or Connection for us gringos. Elis, welcome to the show.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me on once again.
This is going to be a really interesting episode because not only are you a scratch agency owner as of about a year ago, which we'll get into, you also have a very interesting side hustle that a lot of people may want to pick your brain on. So we're going to tuck that nugget into the backside of the show after we talk about you and your agency. But I would love for you to give us the 411 on the Elise story. Who you are, your background, your family interests, really anything you want to share about the personal side of Elise.
Yeah, so I'm 26 years old and I've been in the industry for 8 years. So I've been in it like it's the only industry I've really been in. I have a adorable little 3-year old daughter, and I love to just network with other people in the industry. But on my free time, I like to just listen to music or go to carnivals. That's like me and my daughter's thing. We go to all the carnivals, and there's one today, so we'll probably be going to that one. So,
Wow. Now, what kind of carnivals are you talking about here? Like the amusement park ride carnivals or like local festival type
yeah,
stuff?
like they pull the rides out of a suitcase type carnival.
Oh gosh. Great risk management there, right? That's just a way to make your head spin,
Exactly. Yeah, I
especially
love
if your head is actually spinning on the ride that you're on.
right? And I'm like, my daughter's a thrill seeker, so I can get on like as long as she's tall enough. Because if she was a little bit taller, she could get on more rides. She's just a little daredevil, so
Hmm.
we get on those rides. But yeah, I like to do things like that, or just go to like local events. But yeah, summertime is a fun time because there's lots of things going on. So
Very
I'm from
cool.
Kansas City, by the way. I don't know if I mentioned that. So
Yeah, that was my next question. I knew that, but we hadn't talked about that on the episode yet. So, Kansas City is such a cool place to be, man. I love KC. It is just about dead center of the geography. North, south, east, west. KC is basically smack dab in the middle of the country. So,
yeah.
a 2 hour plane ride, you can get just about anywhere.
Yeah, and this like our city, it's not big, but it has a lot of soul and a lot of cool things to do. So I love our city, and I grew up here. So
Very cool. So, how in the world did you find insurance? You said you've been doing this. If my math is right, you've been doing it since you were 18. What
yeah,
was that like?
yeah, it was. I started off doing like clerical work, like secretarial tasks, back office tasks for my dad's agency. He owned an agency with a partner, but my dad only had like he had ownership in it, but he wasn't really well vested in insurance or anything like that, and still isn't to this day. He likes real estate, and that's what he sticks to. He'd actually be like your target clientele right there, like investor, flipper,
Yeah.
wholesaler. But yeah, he that's how I got started. Was just like on the weekends on high school doing non-licensed work, and then as soon as I turned 18, I went and I got my license, and I just kind of have been doing it ever since. I like fell in love with it. I love helping people understand their policies and getting them covered. So I've just been doing it ever since.
Cool. No, that's fantastic. What was the point where you said, you know what, I'm going to do my own thing. I'm going to have my own shop. How did Conexion happen?
Yeah, it was really just like a it was something that had been a work in progress. Like when I was working with my dad's agency, it was very much a family agency, so all of our siblings were in it. And I think we all just had like our different styles of management, different styles of running a business, and I kind of always like to try and innovate. Like if I saw a way to smooth out a system, I would try and build those out to kind of make life easier. So I was in my dad's agency for about 5 years. And then I took a 2 year break when I had my daughter. So I was not doing anything for 2 years. And then after that, I was like, well, I want to get back into it, but I think I'm ready to do my own thing. And I had just joined the Facebook groups, and that was a game changer for me because there's a plethora of information on there. People who have already done their research and have already scoped out different softwares. I didn't even know what a CRM was up until last year. So,
Mm.
all of that's been a game changer. I've definitely made a lot of progress since, but those groups are just so powerful because so
Oh
much
yeah.
knowledge there.
No, the impact that IAOA had on my career back at the very beginning, and not a part of that group anymore, not really a part of really any Facebook group anymore, just from the way that life evolves and whatnot. I'm still in the Mavericks group, but I'm not
Mhm.
terribly active there anymore.
Got it.
Um, but I mean, there's been, gosh, thousands of hours spent in those groups. I'm really glad to hear that you had such a good time connecting in. Anybody that you see as a mentor, as a leader, a coach, or a peer that's a few years further down the line that you want to give a shout out to? Anybody who's been really helpful for your journey so far?
Oh yeah, I have a lot of them. Like there's a lot of people I look up to, honestly, yourself included, because I see that niche agencies are like, they can be really successful. Because I always kind of just thought generalist, and I'm kind of starting to learn that niche agencies are also a really good um, direction to
Yep.
go in. But when I go to the conferences, because the first one I went to was IAOA in Nashville, and that's when I really was like mind blown by all the speakers, people like Jason Kilgo, Billy Wagner, and I don't know like some of those people personally. Some of them I do now, like I've been able to network with them and stuff. But yeah, there's so much wisdom, and I just respect people who have been in the industry for way longer than I have. Love to pick their brains and just
Yep.
network with them.
No, that's great. From what I've seen from you, I don't think it's going to be too long before there's people calling you, asking you for advice, and picking your brain on things. It's your path is really cool to see because you may be calling yourself a generalist, but you definitely have your own way of doing things. You want to talk about some of your own philosophy, the principles that you're using to run your agency and kind of carve your own path in this industry.
Yeah, thank you so much, by the way. Yeah, so I really fell in love with tech and like automation, and I just really see how much it can free up your time because things like virtual assistants and things like that were things that were unknown to me, like before I even opened my own agency,
Yep.
and things like that enable you to really scale your agency because it's important to do that from the beginning and to be intentional about those kinds of things, but you don't really know that until you um, like see other people talking about it and sharing their wisdom. And so something I really implement in my agency is like if there's a way to improve something, we will do it. I'm very much like I'm not slow to innovate if there's a new tech or something. Obviously there's like the shiny object syndrome as well, but like in
Yep.
general, if the tech is going to deliver good ROI and it's going to actually add value to the agency, I will implement that and be very intentional about um, you know setting that up right away and using it right away. Which is kind of how I got into Gale. But yes.
Well, let's go ahead and go there. You opened the Gale box. Let's talk about it. For those of you that aren't familiar, we have kind of allowed the Gale thing to mature a little bit. I've demoed them a couple of times. We haven't deployed them in our office. I don't have a ton of firsthand experience, so I'm a little hesitant when I get the feeling that something is still very much becoming what it's going to be. I like to let things mature a little bit before I put them in front of our audience here. But it's been a few months since I demo with them. I'd love for you to kind of explain what Gale is for those of our audience that may not be familiar, and then talk about what you've done for your side hustle to kind of go alongside your work in the agency.
Yeah. Yeah. So Gale is basically an AI voice technology, but it was built specifically for insurance. So there's a plethora of them on the market right now, but none of them have catered to insurance, let alone the independent agent. Because I think that's another thing that's just so interesting is that not even insurance companies have access to this technology yet. The closest thing we have to it is Progressive's traditional AI that everybody hates. The one that it's like, oh, I picked up background noise, I can't hear you. And so that's basically what it is, and it enables insurance agencies to um, be there after hours, yes, and overflow calls, but also just offset a lot of the mundane, repetitive phone calls, insurance card requests. When's my next payment? Or when's my policy going to expire? The same repetitive, mundane phone calls. So it enables you to focus on more IPA related tasks. So that's basically what it is. And you are able to customize and script it to your agency because we all do things differently. And that's the thing about the independent agent world is like we all just do things so differently from our talk paths to the way we deliver service and the way that we quote. So everything's just very different. But yeah,
So what your business is coming alongside agents and helping with scripting and building the talk path for the Gale voice AI. Is that right?
yeah. So a lot of people find the scripting aspect a little bit intimidating, or they think it's just like a lot of work. And so basically, the pain point I'm trying to solve is to go in there and help agency owners figure out how to script their agent or script their Gale to make their client interactions a lot smoother. Because the way Gale comes out of the box, understandably so, it's a little bit generic and you know,
Hello, I am here to help with your insurance request.
yeah, exactly. And so, it uses fancy terms. It'll say like representative, and I will script it to say team member, for example, just like
Yep.
one of the things you make it more casual, more laid back, and people are a lot more receptive to talking to it when it is more human like.
Oh man, it's so funny. Like we can all imagine a bad AI. Hello, thank you for calling Riskwell. How may I help you today?
Yeah.
It's like, oh no, don't do that. No.
Well, it helps too that it's a generative AI. So it's different because it has context that you don't even have to script into it. Like, for example, if somebody's like, "Oh, I'm driving right now. Give me a second," Gail will respond back with "Safety first, no worries." I didn't script her to say that, but because she's a generative AI, she can take context and respond with things that you wouldn't think of. So I just think a
You
little
know,
bit.
that is the most interesting part of an audio-based generative AI is how difficult it is to toe that line between being helpful and relevant, but also being on brand. And like for a generative AI, I feel like humor is the most difficult thing because it most of the time it comes off as plastic or really flat.
Yeah.
How do you help your clients that are getting on board with Gale? How in the world do you tackle the whole personality and brand thing? Like, how do you even start with it?
Yeah. So, I mean, it was something that I really had to sit down and map out. I basically just built out a framework out of my own agency. There's with inbound calling, there's only so many scenarios that are bound to happen, right? Like claims,
Yep.
make a payment.
There's 5 categories, right? That's
Yeah,
it.
I mean, if we break it down, it branches out into even more. But it's like once you built out that framework, all you really have to do is ask that agency owner how you want their Gale to respond. Do you want it to verify with a phone number or an address, or do you not want it to verify identity at all? Every agency is so different, and so I basically just made a little framework, and I am still very new. I don't want to make it sound like it's something that I've been doing forever. Like I just opened up the company this month, so and I've helped two agencies set up their handbooks. So it's just been a really interesting experience seeing how different we all do things, even
Mm.
though we do similar things. We're selling auto, home, and business, but the way that agency A and agency B do it is completely different. Sometimes some agencies like to build rapport in their initial calls, while others like to deliver that rapport when they're delivering the quote. So
Mm.
it completely varies and depends on the agency.
So, do you mind if I ask if you have any kind of, partnership or collaboration with the folks over at Lula,
Mhm.
or if you are third partying this thing all the way through?
I'm third partying the whole way through. They certified me as a scripter because they saw some of my work and they were like, "Yep, we approve of the way that you script, basically." So I'm a Guild associate, but no, I'm not like affiliated with them in any type of way other than that. I definitely feel like it's just better to focus on the consulting aspect of it. And Gale is constantly evolving. It's still an open beta, so
Yeah,
it's just kind of about staying on top of the new features and um, it's going to enable texting and email capabilities very soon. So that's going to be a game changer. So they have
very cool.
lots of cool things down the pipeline for them. So
Earlier in my career, I really prided myself on being an early adopter, on me being on the bleeding edge of
yes,
whatever piece of tech or innovation it was. And the longer we're in this game, the more content I am to be one of the very first to get on once something leaves beta. But
yeah,
the days of me participating in an open beta and having things break while we're trying to use them and deploy them,
yeah,
unfortunately, the volume that we work at, we don't really have the luxury of being involved as early as we used to be. Uh, but
absolutely.
man, I have so much gratitude for people like you that are jumping in to I mean, what is an extremely cool piece of tech. I mean, Gale is, if I understood correctly, Gale is the first generative AI to pass a state insurance licensing exam, right?
Yeah, that's right. It's the first one, and that's why, in my opinion, it's the best solution for our industry over things like AIR or other similar AI,
Hmm.
generative AI technologies. So
And air is clever, but it has no basis in insurance. It hasn't been taught insurance. And I
yeah,
mean, as we all know with Chat GPT and all the little miniature GPTs that you can create on your own with training, it takes a lot of effort to take a generative AI platform and make it what you need it to be.
for sure, for sure. And so the fact that that solution's already been built out is just amazing because, or else you would have to pretty much do all that work your own on your own. Explain to the generative AI how auto insurance works, or like go more into detail about the nuances, and that would just be incredibly time
It's
consuming.
a lot of work and effort.
Yes,
Hmm.
yes, but I can definitely see what you mean about like you're at a point where you can't really do the trial and error thing, and I 100% agree because my agency is barely at the 1 million premium mark, and we were very intentional from the beginning with trying to work smarter. And so, um, but even then, there's still a service load associated with selling non-standard business. And so that's how I'm able to test it because it isn't like a huge call volume. I
Yeah.
If I was there, I probably would not be able to be as
Yeah.
flexible with testing it.
So let's go back to your agency for a little bit, since it seems like a logical point in the conversation. Tell me about what you guys are into. You said before we started recording, you're heavy personal lines, but from standard lines to E&S to commercial, like where do you find yourself really, fitting in the market there in Kansas City?
Yeah, we write a lot of contractors. That's like our main thing on the commercial side. And then for the personal side, we're a little non-standard heavy, and that was because in the beginning I was just wanting to write business, but now we have mapped out our ideal client, and we're being a lot more selective with the type of business we write. Unfortunately, though, with how the market is and things like that, like a lot of carriers are just tightening up so much out here. Guard just pulled out of all of the 50 states for personal lines. So kind of just trying to repivot and figure out who we want to focus on. But yeah, at the moment, I would say contractors for sure on the commercial side, and
Hmm.
um, real estate as well, but not um, not the majority. That's just like part of the commercial side.
Gotcha. And you said your dad was really into real estate as well, and investing and making deals happen and whatnot. What kind of impact has he had in the way that you choose to run your business? With you being a second generation entrepreneur, growing up with I don't know what your mom does, but at least one of your parents, being in business and being able to make their own decisions. That has a tremendous impact on a young person. The context that they carry into the way they think about their own career. So many doors are open to you that most kids don't ever consider if mom and dad's not an entrepreneur.
I agree 100%. And that's why I'm so thankful for the both of them. They both very much have a very entrepreneurial spirit. I think it's just something that runs in our family because we're all kind of like that. But yeah, my dad in particular has definitely shown me a lot on how to be a people person because him and I are naturally introverted. And so it kind of takes a lot to be more sociable, to go out there and network and generate leads and things like that. So, yeah, it's been very helpful for me for sure. And I wouldn't have even gotten into this industry if it wasn't for him. So
Hmm.
I owe it all to him, ultimately.
Love it. As the dad of a son and daughter, both are around the agency all the time. Like they're on a first name basis with everybody who works here. I'm really curious to see how things progress with them in the future because I'm never going to bring it up. I'm not going to say, "Hey, do you want to come work at Riskwell this summer, or do you want to intern or whatever?" Never going to do it. I will have that conversation as soon as they bring it up, but I'm never going to put any pressure on them. So anytime I get to hear like a generational story where mom and dad or mom or dad were in insurance and I get to talk to their kid, it's like, man, I'd love to hear more about that. That's pretty cool.
Yeah,
So
that's
good stuff.
that's awesome that you're not bringing it up, but rather letting them get attracted to it. And I think that this industry is only going to become more and more appealing to younger people.
Yeah.
Um, and it definitely needs more diversity in that sense of like age ranges. But I think a
Hmm.
lot of young people are entering the industry, and my producer over here is actually 19. So,
Wow.
yeah, so we're all kind of young. Well, compared to her, I'm kind of old now. I used to feel as the youngest when I was in the office, but now more and more newer faces are entering the industry, so that's exciting.
Well, and anytime I have the privilege of talking with someone who is a double minority, both an ethnic or socio whatever the family history minority, but also a female in a male dominated industry, I'd love to hear about the ways that you have leveraged your identity, your cultural background, and your status as a woman in the industry to carve out paths of your own that may not be available to someone like me, who's a majority demographic, white, heterosexual, Protestant, suburban male. Like I'm the definition of a stereotype. You have several opportunities to, you know, play different cards and have different markets, different strategies, different tactics, different networking things that are available to you. I'd love to hear you talk about how you're leveraging some of those advantages that are, right there in front of you.
Yeah, so there's definitely a lot of like local things here, like a Hispanic Chamber of Commerce,
Hmm.
things like that. And I think things like that are definitely very useful because it's also a cultural thing too, like the way that the culture is with Hispanic and Latinos. Like they are very relationship based and
Hmm.
want to be face to face, and so things like that has kind of helped me grow in that sense as well. But I also like to think of it as just like in general, like I want to not only think of myself as that, but also just you know other things as well. But I do
Sure.
definitely agree that there is, without that, that's how my dad's agency grew so fast because he didn't implement any fancy tech, anything like that, any strategies. It was just there was a need for bilingual agencies in the area in
Yep.
2009, and he was one of the first agencies to really offer that, and so that's how he was able to grow. And yeah, and as for women, being a woman in the industry, like I do think that it is definitely male dominated, but it's also just really interesting when I go to these conferences, seeing other women agency owners and how they juggle being a mom and being a business owner because that's a whole other
Yep.
balance and things that women have to deal with.
Oh, for sure. Yeah. One of the things I think as I'm listening to your story, the way that you're unpacking this stuff, it's got to be really cool for you to be able to bring the context of being a Latina when you're going after contractors. And I don't know off the top of my head what the market's like in Kansas City, but here in the South, I mean, gosh, probably 80% of all of the trade contractors are Hispanic. and the vast majority of them don't have proper insurance in place. And you talked about the cultural stuff. There's a lot of systemic distrust of insurance because in so many countries in Central America, insurance doesn't work the way that it's supposed to. It's
Yeah,
kind of a scam. In Mexico, in Nicaragua, and Guatemala, and other places in Central America, people down there that like live in those countries don't have a good impression of insurance as an industry, as a category.
yeah,
So you have a huge opportunity to make a positive impact in a subculture that is generally probably not that keen on insurance at all.
yeah. It is definitely a lot of educating, and even then, sometimes just because of what you just explained right now, like in those countries, there are no consequences to not having workers' comp insurance for your
Yeah.
employees. So it's
And you can be a
important.
complete crook and steal from someone and have virtually no consequences.
Exactly. And so it's like, um, it's like almost like they think, well, what's the big deal, right? And so
Yeah.
then you have to explain to them, all of that. So 100%, I agree with you on that.
How do you get around that? What walk me through your education process? Because whenever I have, because we do with a lot of stuff with subcontractors, we have two people on our team here at Riskwell
Yeah.
that are fluent in Spanish. I have just enough Spanish to get myself through traveling other countries. I'm good at a restaurant. I'm good in a cab. I'm good at a hotel. But don't put me on the phone with someone who's trying to buy insurance. Thankfully, it's not my job to do that. We have people that are great at that.
That's
But
awesome.
one of the things that we encounter time and time and time again is this systemic distrust of why would I do that? I don't need to buy that. It doesn't, even if I buy that, it's not going to go like it's supposed to. There's so much resistance to the whole concept of being what we would consider properly insured. How
Yes.
do you get around that, in your education, talking points? And how do you start to unpack the cultural resistance?
Yeah, I agree. I think there's a lot of pre-connotations about how it all works. And I think what has been most effective for me in my education portion of things is basically just giving claims examples. I really think that that really makes them open their eyes. Like, oh wow, that really happened to somebody. I'll be
Mm,
like, yeah, I'll give an example of a claim scenario and what can go wrong when you don't have the proper coverage or when you're not rating yourself accurately on a policy, because that can happen sometimes too. Sometimes maybe somebody does have a policy, but it's not rated accurately. And so I kind of break that down for them, and it kind of helps them understand it a little bit more when you explain it in layman's terms. And
mhm.
so, yeah, that's kind of what I do to educate them and kind of break those pre-connotations of, oh, well, what are the consequences? Or I don't think I need that type of
Hmm.
connotations.
So what I'm hearing you say is you're basically knocking down walls everywhere you go, whether it's cultural separation or people that don't understand and know how to deal with AI correctly. You're basically just bringing things together in every context of the word, aren't you?
Well, I don't know. I try my best to just grow, and I really fell in love with the tech side of things, but I definitely still have a lot of growing to do. Like I
Sure.
see people like, you or other really, really knowledgeable risk advisors, and I want to get to that point and invest that time. I actually was working on getting my CIC designation when I was 19, and
There you
I never picked it back up, but I want to. I actually want to be more knowledgeable to where I can write more middle market and things like that, because
cool.
right now I haven't had that size of account yet, but it's something I'm working on and striving towards.
The CIC, I can't say enough good things about it. That was the first one that I did. I finished mine back in 2018.
That's awesome.
And man, it was fantastic. I cannot recommend it highly enough for you or anybody who wants to, continue your education. It's probably the most useful of all of the, advanced designations or, whatever you want to call it, the things that are hanging on the wall over there. The CIC is definitely the most useful just in a day-to-day sales environment. The product knowledge and understanding how to dig into a policy and really just comb through the forms to find what you're looking for and
Yeah.
explain to someone in simple language why this is different than that and why they should care about this, piece of paper over there. Like, you should definitely go back and finish your CIC.
I will, yeah, and I want to because that's actually why I chose that one because everyone was like, "This is more real world
Mhm.
designation versus the CPCU," which I had initially started with was so overwhelming. I was like, "This is so much information,"
Yep.
um, but yeah, kudos to people who hold multiple designations because that is a lot of work and very time consuming to get those completed. But I think things like ChatGPT, if I would have had those back then, not to say that those could replace, the work that people put into those designations, but kind of like what you
Sure.
just said right now, where you're comparing policy forms and explaining it in layman's terms. ChatGPT can do that now too. So it almost leverages and boosts your knowledge and enhances
Yep.
you. So
Now, imagine what you'll be capable of doing when you have your CIC and all of your knowledge of generative AI to be able to tailor your prompts in more specific ways to get even more useful information out of your generative AI.
absolutely.
Now, to put your mind at ease, the CPCU is a lot easier when you just take it one bite at a time. But I will say it doesn't really come in handy as much with the insured.
Hmm.
Really comes in handy when you're dealing with underwriters and carrier people, when you need to have a hard conversation with somebody on the form or ask for an exception or have something that's happening with a wholesaler or a carrier or whatever, because the insured definitely doesn't care about the CPCU, but everybody on the company side recognizes when you have those letters after your name, 'cause
Yeah,
they know that you're taken a lot more seriously most of the time.
yeah, I think even in that first class I took for CPCU, I saw a lot of underwriters actually taking that class too. And I thought
Yep.
that was very interesting. I was like, oh, this isn't just for insurance agents, this is for
Oh
all
yeah.
professionals.
And anybody who aspires to writing middle market and larger accounts, like being able to speak underwriter fluently and
Yeah,
knowing how they look at things and understanding how cash flow works with an insurance carrier, like being able to understand the financial models of these carriers and think in their terms when you're arguing for an account, when you're writing an executive summary, when you're advocating on your client's behalf with somebody at the company side.
yeah,
It's pretty cool to be able to do that because I mean, I couldn't have done that before,
yeah.
and
I,
those are things I picked up in the CPCU.
I can't do that now. So that's why when I see things like that, I'm like, I would love to get at that level. Um, it's just
You'll
about
get there.
education and time.
I
But
mean, I didn't finish my CPCU until, it was during COVID. I used some of the time in COVID to really focus on getting the CPCU done, and there's 9 exams in the CPCU, and,
oh my goodness.
every single one of them's pretty difficult. Like, there wasn't a single one when I got done, I was like, "That was easy, come
And it's
on."
it's not multiple choice, right? I feel like I remember it was a lot
No,
of
it's multiple choice. Yeah, that's the one thing where CIC and CRM is completely different because those are like short answer and essay basically.
yeah.
There is no multiple choice with CIC and CRM. So
Okay, that's
you have to come up with the answer on your own,
yes,
which is a lot more difficult than multiple choice. I
yes,
cannot imagine if CPCU was short answer and essay.
yeah.
Oh, that sounds awful.
I guess it wouldn't work because it's more technicality,
Hmm.
and it's not so much scenario based or real world based. So that
Yep.
actually makes a lot of sense. But yeah, I think knowledge is power, 100%, and that's why I invest so much of my time into just trying to grow my knowledge. But sometimes I feel like I do overwhelm myself sometimes, like just trying to,
Yep.
and I have to stop and remember little steps at a time.
The last thing I'll say in regards to designations is the people that tend to discount and downgrade the importance of designations, I notice that they don't have any. So
Yeah,
it's always interesting to me. The people that
it's
say,
easy
"Oh, designations don't matter." It's like,
and invest the
"Well, you
time.
don't have it. You don't have any designations. So maybe don't say that."
No, I
So
agree.
you and I can talk about this till the cows come home, but I told you it was gonna be about 35 minutes of runtime.
Yeah.
As we start to land the plane, on this conversation and on the interview stage of our podcast, 170 something episodes, you're the last interview. So we're landing the plane on this conversation and landing the plane on interviews on agency freedom, for at least several months. maybe for good. I don't know. Um, what do you want to finish with? Is there anything we haven't talked about that was on your mind for, hey, I'd love to talk with James about XYZ?
Um, well, I'm just really thankful that you had me on before closed off for a hiatus or, with your podcast. But I think that what I really wanted to ask was like, how did you get to where you are now? But I think you pretty much answered that. You just invested so much time into getting your designations and, because you seem very knowledgeable. Like I've seen some of this when you respond to some people's questions on IAOA back in the day. I noticed I was like, he's very knowledgeable. So, and I
Yeah.
was curious as to how you got to that point, obviously with time and experience, but
hmm it really helps when you're a complete nerd for this stuff. And I started playing golf about a year ago, but up until that point, didn't really have any hobbies. My kids and spending time with my family and my close friends, and doing stuff with my church group was basically the only thing that I did outside of work.
yeah,
Just really love this stuff. I'm a complete nerd for it. I think it is the coolest thing ever. Risk management and insurance, like the transfer of risk from one party to another, and all the nuts and bolts.
yeah,
It is just the coolest thing. I really dig the industry, um, and being able to have knowledge that you can then deploy with someone and understand something at a really high level so that you can explain it using small words and make it very simple for someone that doesn't understand it. Like it's a superpower that's just a whole lot of fun.
agree.
Most people poo poo the whole insurance thing. They think it's lame and boring and just a bunch of slimy salespeople. And I mean, you and I both know, and everybody listening to this podcast knows, golly, it's way more than that.
Yeah,
And I don't mind being a little bit of an evangelist for doing insurance differently, doing it the way that I think it should be done. Because just about everybody that I have a conversation with, and I'm sure you're the same way, Elise, as you take this stuff very seriously. You're a second generation insurance nerd.
yeah,
You get the opportunity to change the way that someone thinks about an entire industry and
yeah.
change the way they think about insurance as a concept. And for a lot of business owners, you're getting them ready for a bad day in their future. And
Yeah.
conversations with you is going to make someone's life, their business, their employees, their family better,
It's true.
objectively better. And that is a superpower by itself.
Agreed. It's truly an impactful industry to be in, and to be perceived as an expert is just something that I'm not saying I am, but I'll
You're
get there.
on your way. You're definitely on your way. Don't ever shortchange yourself.
Thank you. But
But
yeah, agreed.
yeah, I mean, that's the only advice I would give you is just set aside time every week, time for yourself, time to be curious, time to indulge learning about something that interests you. Asking Chat GPT, compare and contrast questions, you know, getting out, registering for that next class and reading the CIC textbook before you're in the class. I mean, you can
Yeah.
register for a class that's months from now, and then you can read the book whenever you get a chance. You don't have to register for a class that starts next week.
I
You
have
can
like
pay for it and put it on the calendar.
I gotta go dig them up. I
There you
have
go.
them there. But
I think
yeah,
this is probably a good place to stop. How do you want people to reach out if they want to connect with you? You are a very inspiring young lady. I think the world of you. I'm really glad that we got to end the interview chapter of the podcast with you. I think we're going out with a big bang. Um, when people want to reach out to you and say, "Hey, Elise, I'd like to hear more about insert topic here,"
yeah.
what's your preferred way to communicate?
I like to communicate through email or text. So you can reach me at Elise, Elis, at Connexion, CONEXIONINS.com. Or you can
Cool.
text me at my business line, 727-314-2523.
Okay, and we'll put that information in the show notes, folks, in case you didn't catch it when Elise was talking just now. She is Elis Umana from the Connection. or Conexion if you want to sound more cultured like I do. And this has been another episode of the Agency Freedom Podcast. Make it a great day, boys and girls. We will start our next episode with the new format. We're coming down to a runtime of 20 minutes or less, very topical, very tactical episodes that is going to get a lot more specific on a smaller focused topic each week. So we will catch you next week. Y'all take care.
Thank you.